Learning a block Gemara. Today's daf is daf Lamed Hey. We are up to Lamed Daled Amud Beis, and this is actually Wednesday's. This is Wednesday's Gemara that we are learning now. Okay, so let's learn. The last thing we learned was that Papa came along and said that if you stole an animal and then you shechted and sell it, you got to pay not just double, you got to pay 4 or 5 times, depending if it's a sheep or it's a cow. But then he said that if you stole an animal, he didn't say that, if he said other people said as well, but if you stole an animal during the week and then you shechted it on Shabbos, you're chayiv because you're chayiv on Geneva for the week, and then what you did on Shabbos is what do you call it? Is you are potter. But so you're already chayiv on Geneva before you came to the Isser of Shabbos. But if you stole it on Shabbos itself, and you sold it on Shabbos itself, then you are potter because kamle b'derabba menei. Okay. What do you call it? And if you stole it during the week and you shechted on Shabbos, then not only do you pay for the stealing, you also pay for the dal of the hay because that's only a knas. And we said before that kamle b'derabba menei does not exonerate you from knas. But if you did everything on Shabbos, since the kedem, the principle, you're not going to pay because kamad rabbanei, so it's no longer 4 or 5 times, because included in the multiple of 4 or 5 is the principle itself. Okay, so then Rav Papa came along. That's what we're talking about now. He came along and said, if you borrowed an animal, the same thing applies. So if you borrowed an animal then you went ahead and you shechted it on Shabbos, then you are potter. Why are you potter? Because when did you become a ganif? Not when you borrowed it, you became a ganif when you shechted it. In other words, when you borrowed it, the animal, as long as the animal is in existence, you owe nothing to the owner. Just the original animal is his. The moment it died, that's when you become liable. So since you shechted it on Shabbos, you became liable for everything on Shabbos. And therefore, we say, kamle b'derabba b'nei, because included in that is the principle. So now up to the Gemara here, about 20 lines to the bottom. The last 2 words are Amar Rav. Says Rav, the father died and left behind a borrowed animal, mishtamsh and mishtamsh b'ko yimei shalos, so they can continue using it based on what the father borrowed. However, mace, if it died by accident, a borrower normally has to pay for accidents. They don't have to pay for accidents. Ain't chayavin ba'insa. They're not liable for the accidents. What are they liable for? According to Taisus, since they're having benefit from the animal, they're like a shem mesacha. They're liable if it got stolen or got lost, but not for accidents because they themselves are not the borrowers. Other than shem hold, they're not even liable for theft either. They're only liable if it's for negligence. What happens is Kesuvos Daf, they thought it belonged to the father. The tavchu, so they went ahead and shechted it. Va'achlu, they ate it. Then mishalmin demei basa bezer, they have to pay for the animal that they ate. They had no right to, but they pay it in a cheap way, the cheapest possible way, because it's not their fault. But what happens if they didn't know? What happens if father never told them there was a borrowed animal? What happens if the father died, left behind an estate, which means that there are liens against the state? Then then they have to pay because the father borrowed the animal, so they have to reimburse the lender. But we're not sure which case of Rav are we talking about. Are we talking about the first case of Rav, where they knew it was a borrowed animal, and then they went ahead and what do you call it? And if the animal died, then they are not responsible for the oinsin. But if the father left behind assets, they are, because Rava holds, if you follow the first way, Rava holds, as soon as you borrow the animal, already you owe the owner for the animal. So the assets now have the lien against the assets. I don't care if the animal's still alive. If the animal dies, then it's retrospective because the assets already have a lien on them. Or do we say no? Do we say that you're not liable until the animal dies, and since the father was no longer alive when the animal died, there's no lien on the assets because the assets were not indebted to the animal. As long as the animal's alive, you just return the animal. So this is the 2 ways of learning Pshat in the Gemara. So the Gemara says, that those who say that even on the Reisha, where they borrowed the animal and they knew it was a borrowed animal, the father borrowed it, then they died later, they don't, the assets are still, there's a lien on the assets, because the moment the father borrowed the animal, already there was a lien on the assets, because you already owe the money back to the lender. And just that as long as the animal's alive, you can return the original animal. Those say no. In that case, the assets are there's no lien on the assets as long as the animal's alive until the animal dies, and then the father's dead already. But in the sefer where the father was negligent, as Tosfos explains, the father was negligent, didn't bother telling the children, he already then owed money to the lender because he did something wrong. He was negligent, did not inform the children it was a borrowed animal. Then it's only limited to the sefer. That's the only time where the father is responsible straight away. There's a lien on his assets. Man, the Masaleh says it's talking about the beginning, Koshkina sefer. If it talks about if that's every case when you borrow, if there's a lien on the asset straight away because you owe the money straight away, then Kosh can say, but surely in the case there where the father was negligent from the moment, surely from the moment that he borrowed it, he didn't tell his children, surely the assets are indebted to it. Upliga that Papa argues that Papa who said that you do not become liable for any borrowed animal until it actually dies. Not like Rabba who says that as soon as you borrow an animal, you already have a lien on the asset, you already owe money. Umanda Masla Sefer, but learns that talking about the end, not talking about the beginning. In other words, only in the Sefer where the father was negligent, that's when we say there's a lien on the assets. But in a normal case of borrowing, as long as the animal's alive, you owe nothing. Now the Gemara continues, going back to what we originally said. We all started this whole Gemara. We had a contradiction between our Mishnah where it says you pay money if you force yourself on these different women, and in Makkah we said that you get malchus if they're your sister and so on and so forth. So we said Rabbi Yochanan wanted to answer that our Mishnah is talking about where there was no warning, there's no malchus, therefore you pay money, and the Gemara in Makkah is talking about there was a warning, so there's malchus, and whenever there's malchus and money, you always give the stricter punishment, which is malchus. Fine. And the Shlakish says that our Mishnah follows Rameir, who holds that you get malchus and you get money at the same time. But the Shlakish said when it comes to dying, when it comes to his daughter, for example, there Rameir agrees, come labor de rabba mineh. There we agree. So the Gemara Bishlem, he would rather learn the Mishnah goes according to the Rabbanon that you don't get malchus a moment. Come with Rabbane. But here it's talking about there was no warning. Why is it why not? He said, I completely argue with I hold the rule is that if you commit a sin that deserves to get malchus, even though you won't get it because you weren't warned, you don't pay the money. Potter is killer. Even there was no warning and you're not going to get lashes, you still don't pay the money. And they both are consistent with their view. Rabbi Yochanan says if you don't get lashes, you pay the money. Rish Lakish says since you committed a sin that deserves lashes, even if you don't get lashes, you don't see the lashes, you don't pay the money. Ravdimi said, if somebody, let's say, committed a sin that, let's say, on Shabbat lit a fire, that by mistake, so you deserve to die for it. And the same thing is if he did a sin that deserves to get malchus, and but by mistake, so you don't get malchus, then you did something that incurs a monetary fine payment. The fact is you're not getting malchus or misa, pay the money. The Shlokish says potter. It's a sin that has malchus or misa, you don't pay the money. The fact that you get a warning, so why shouldn't you pay? Even the ilu asabe, if you would have received the warning, potter be potter, is kiloy asabe nami potter. So even though right now there was no warning, since it came coupled with an aveda that's so strict, you don't pay money. Question. We learn out the whole concept of common rabbinic. It says the woman doesn't die, then anish, you get a punishment. Sounds like if the woman if the woman doesn't die, you get a punishment. When do you get a punishment? Only if you're warned. My love, osan mamish, that we're talking about here, that if you're warned about the woman, and therefore you're going to get punished for that, then you don't pay for the children. But if you weren't warned about the woman, then you will get, and then you will have to pay the money. So Rabbi Yochanan says clearly from here, when we say common rabbin, is only if what you'll actually carry out the punishment. Sorry, the other way around. It says in my love, the woman died. I don't care if you were warned or not warned. As long as the woman died, you don't pay money. So we see clearly from here that even though there was no warning, you still don't pay the money. So he said, no, din asan. The din that only if the din of asan applies here, that means that there was a warning and you'll get punished, then you don't pay the money. The other said all the way around. Sorry, that's why I got confused before. Only the din of asana was applied. No, but there's a warning. That's when you don't pay the money. So Rabbi Yishmael that's back. It means no. As long as if the woman died, I don't care if there was a warning, not warning. You don't pay money. You don't pay for the children. for the babies. Anybody who holds that a chayav misses that if somebody committed, let's say, lit a fire on Shabbos without realizing it, you burn somebody's house down, that you're a potter for paying. Everyone agrees that you're a potter, even if you don't get killed, because what Tanvi Chizkiah learned, maka adam and maka behema, ma maka behema, just like maka behema. You don't make a difference between b'shegig and b'mezid. You don't make a difference whether it was a shegig or whether it was a mazid. Just like what it says in the pasuk, one pasuk says that if you strike an animal, you have to pay for it, and then the pasuk continues and says, but if you strike a person, you get killed. So obviously, you kill the person, and you kill the animal. When you kill the animal, you have to pay for it. Does it make a difference if it's intentional or not intentional? Does it make a difference whether it was by mistake or deliberate? When you kill somebody by mistake and you go to Golos, it's only if it's going down, not if you're going up. If you're going down, it's a bit negligent, you should be more careful. By the animal makes a difference. In all instances, you're chayiv. So af maka adam, when it says over here that if you kill somebody, you should be put to death. Lo yitachal makes no difference. B'shegig, b'mezid, b'skav, b'sheim b'skav makes no difference. Like an animal makes no difference. Intentional, non-intentional, and all that. In all cases, you are exempt from paying any money. The animal, you pay money here, you never pay money because even in the case where you're not going to get killed for it because it's unintentional. So, and Tanvi Chizkiah said that, and we know that Tanvi Chizkiah said all the Braises are Rab Chia, and in fact, Rab Chia was his father. So therefore, it must be that's the halacha. Even there's an opinion that argues definitely Tanvi Chizkiah is the halacha. Says the Gemara, you're right. You're right. If you committed a sin that you deserve to die for, everyone agrees. Come with the you don't pay any money. They're only arguing if you committed a sin that you chayiv malchus and money, but the pile you were not warned, so you're not going to get to receive the malchus. What happens then? Rabbi Yechon says, why you chayiv? Because the fact that you weren't warned, so there's no malchus, pay the money. Chayav misas iskish, chayav malchus iskish. We only compare misa to an animal, but not malchus. So malchus, if you don't get the punishment, pay the money. Bishlaki says potter. Why? The feidish ripsa Torah, because the Torah clearly told us that chayav malchus, that if you did commit a sin that deserves malchus, chayav misas had the same status like someone who deserves to be killed. Where did the Torah tell us that if someone receives lashes, it's tantamount to receiving death? And therefore the same rule applies there. Hey, Chadipsa Tatus, we have two opinions. Amar Abaye said, I'll tell you where. Asya, in one pasuk it says that if you murdered somebody, you don't take any blood money. Asya hu Rasha Lamus. He's a Rasha to be putting for killing. So we see here clearly that it says the word Rasha when it comes to Misa. And then by Malchus it says, if you understand it, the person deserves to get Malchus, it says, being Hakis a Rasha, calls him a Rasha. So we see that death and malchus, those two sins are equal. Rava says, we learn out maka. We learn out maka. It says maka by behema, and it says maka by killing. Where does it say these two makas? Ilema maka behema, it's in the pasuk. Or maka behema, you hurt an animal, then you have to pay. Or maka adam, you're a person, you should die. That's not lashes, that's death. High big toluxi, by death. Where do you find lashes? It says, well, if you hurt an animal, you have to pay. And then it says, somebody in the next part it says, if you place a mum in your friend, whatever you did to your friend, should do the same to you. Where does it say the word makkah there? No, doesn't say the word makkah here. So where's your zayshava makkah? Says the Gemara, anan hakor kamin. We don't mean the word, we mean the idea. The idea that it says by behem, it says makkah nefesh behem, nefesh tachas nefesh. So we see you kill the animal, and therefore the next pasuk we talk about wounding a person. It's the right next pasuk. So therefore it's like killing, because it's one pasuk after another. Says the Gemara, this pasuk that says if you place a wound on your friend, you should have to pay the same thing happens to you. We're talking about wounding here, your friend. And in fact, what happens if you wound your friend? You don't get lashes. You pay money. You're telling me that wounding is like killing, that, and then we compare that just like by killing, if you didn't get killed, you still don't pay money. By wounding also, if you don't get lashes, you just pay. What do you call it? You don't pay the money because coming rabbinate. Well, right here, the passage you're learning from is Chabala wounding your friend, and you actually do pay the money. Says Gemara, but sometimes when wounding your friend, you don't pay money. We had before. When he may know if we cannot be talking about a wounding that's the value of a pruta, so we're talking about a case where there's the amount, the wound, the value of the wound is less than a pruta. So therefore, there's no money here. And if what do you call it? So if you committed a sin that deserves lashes, you don't pay money. And we're comparing it to an animal. It's like an animal makes no difference if you do get, if it was intentional, non-intentional, same thing by a person, even unintentional, you don't pay money. And unintentional, you don't get lashes either. That's the instruction's proof. Says Gemara, at the end of the day, the reason why you don't pay money because it's less than the pruta, not because it comes with the rabbimene. So how do you learn from that? Says the Gemara, like we're talking about the bahadid, the michia kodesh shirayim. What happened was you wounded your friend. At the same time, you ripped his clothes. So the wound itself is not worth a pruta, but you're also, so there's no money go changing hands, but you ripped his clothes. So l'chayda, you should be paying money, but we're comparing it to an animal. It's like an animal, you're always chayiv money. Here you are potter for money, even though it's unintentional, because come labor the rabbinah, because you're going to get lashes for wounding him, and therefore come with rabbinah, you don't pay money for the shirt that you ripped. Because even then, that's a shloka's opinion. Said to Rabbi, that's impossible for Rab Chia to say anything to Rabbi, because Rab Chia passed away way before Rabbi. Rab Chia was the uncle of Rav, so he definitely lived before Rabbi. But in fact, Rav Yehuda passed away. Rabbi was born. Rav Yehuda was a student of Rav, and Rav was a student of his uncle Rab Chia. And in fact, it says he'll turn to Chizkiah. And I just told you before, the Teitzes of Tanah Chizkiah was a son. Chizkiah was actually Rab Chia's son. We were Rab Chia quote his son who was quoting his father. So obviously it's a different Rab Chia. Not sure who it is, but it's a different Rab Chia. The Amar says, according to Rab Chia, says, Maka Adam Maka Behem. He says, Rab Chia, he learned from the other pasuk from Maka Adam Umaka Behema. Just like a behema, you're always liable to pay money. By killing a person, you never pay money, even if it's b'shegi, because Kamad Rabbanei. My question is very simple. Who told you that in the case of the animal that there's no death involved? It's only malchus. Yeah. And he said that why don't you always pay money? Maybe like the fluge, and there's no difference. Maybe b'Shabbos, maybe the pasuk canvases all cases. Even in the case if you struck the animal on Shabbos, and if you struck the animal on Shabbos, it can't be talking about b'mezid. If you did b'mezid, then obviously you're coming rabbinah, you're going to get killed. He's talking about b'shagig, and the pshat is because you're not getting killed, therefore you have to pay money. The pasuk says by an animal you have to pay money. If you kill the animal, you have to pay money. Maybe it's talking including the case you did it on Shabbos, but there's no misa for you. Why? Because it's done b'shagig, and you have to pay money. Not like we said till now the chayavi misa shagig in his potter. How do you know talking about during the week? Dealing with Shabbos, the behema gufi, looking at the animal itself. There's a difference whether it was done b'mezid or done b'shegi. B'mezid, come rabbinah. B'shegi, no. So that it can't be. Why not? It can't be talking about Shabbos. It says, if you struck an animal, you have to pay. And you struck a person, you get killed. So talking about a case, the very similar case by an animal is by a person, and by a person you're going to get killed. Hey, what are we talking about? Either if there was no warning at all by a person, you get killed. The Maka Adam Mayumas, why is the pasuk saying Maka Adam Yumas? You don't get killed if you weren't warned, but you're not allowed to strike that person to kill him. Elab Shita Asma, he was warned. Now, the Ib Shabbos, if we're talking about on Shabbos and you're warned, so you're going to get killed for striking the animal because one of the malachas, why pay money? Everyone agrees, come with the Rabbaneh. Maka Behemi Shamena. Allah must be talking about Bechel, must be talking about there is no miss at all. They're talking about during the week, there's no Shabbos whatsoever, only during the week. Therefore, you struck the animal, and by the animal, in all cases, whether it was intentional or unintentional, you always have to pay money. So when you strike a person down, in all cases, even if you don't get killed, for example, with Dambashegig, you don't pay money because come of the Papa says the Rabbi, according to Rabbi, the Amr says, Chidish hu shechitcha Torah b'knash. Rabbi said before, his answer was that really is talking about why do we pay money why do we pay money by in our Mishnah, because the case of shechting. If you shechted the animal, you had to, and we talked about, he said it's not talking about through a shliach on Shabbos, because then why are you paying money? He said it's talking because it's a knas. You pay money by a knas. So he says here that the Torah was mechadish, even though we say kamad rabbaneh, but if it's a penalty that you're paying, there's no kam labor de rabbaneh. But avagav the miktul mishalim you pay. is Masnisin Kiman. Who is the author of our Mishnah where it says that you don't pay? That you pay for your sister and all of these things. We don't say like we say that you don't pay because we say that you do pay. We don't believe in common Rabbinay. You do pay. So who's the author of our Mishnah? The question is, who's the author of our Mishnah? So the Gemara says, sorry, just want to turn the lights on. Okay, dark. Okay. So according to Reish Lakish, that says that that even if what do you call it? So according to Reish Lakish, I just lost the voice. Sorry, let's go to Rabbah first. So Rabbah said before that Rameir makes a difference between Shabbos and Malchus. By Malchus, Rameir says Leikinu Mishalmin. By Shabbos, we say, by Misa, we say that you don't get a Leikinu Mishalmin. That's why the next Mishnah, by your daughter Bita, because there's Misa involved, Kamla B'Derabbaneh. That's why the first Mishnah, and therefore according to Rameir, both Mishnahs are correct. You pay money and you get Malchus. Malchus and our Mishnah here. And we brought in the case over there that somebody stole and shechted on Shabbos or stole and shechted in Kippur, and we said over there that that you don't have to pay because Kamud Rabbaneh. And we said you do have to pay. Rameir says you have to pay, but L'chayda Misi you don't. So the first answer we gave was you didn't shecht it, you had a shliach, but he did it on your behalf. So that shliach gets killed for Shabbos, but you pay dollar the hay. That's what Rameir is saying here. But Rabbah gave another answer. He said over there talking about a knas. And because dollar the hay is a knas, even though come the bidrabane, you pay the knas, you pay the dollar the hay. Says the Gemara. So now let's go back to our Mishnah and see how we learn according to Rabbah. Because Rabbah says you pay knas. So in our Mishnah, so our Mishnah says that you pay knas, and the Mishnah in Makkah says you get malchus. Suppose the Rabbi, according to Rabbi, according to Rabbi, who learned Pshat and Ameir, that knas is a chiddush that you pay, even though come live with the Rabbi, you say you pay by knas. So therefore, avagad the mikvah mishalim. So even though that you get killed, you still pay. That's what we said by Tzvei because of knas. So tell me, masnisin kemam mukimla. The next Mishnah that says that by bita your daughter you are potter. Why are you potter? Because you chayiv misa, but so what? It's a knas, and a knas you have to pay. So the Gemara, if it's like a mayor, kasha bita. The next mission says bita your potter covered rabbi, and may hold the knas you pay, and the ikar Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana. And if it follows Rabbi Nechunya ben Akana, then kasha achaysay. Rabbi Nechunya Akana says that you get malchus and you pay, and he what do you call it? Rabbi Yehuda says that you get malchus and you pay, but misa you don't. He says even chorus that you don't pay. He makes no difference. Knas or not knas makes no difference. So the case of Abol Abita, your potter could come with Rabbaneh. So Kasha Achaise, his sister, which is chorus, according to Rabbi Yehuda, by chorus we say come with Rabbaneh. How come Mishnah says that you are potter from paying? And if Rabbi Yitzchak holds that whenever there's a chi of chorus, there's no malchus whatsoever. And therefore, that's why by your sister you have to pay because there's no malchus, so therefore you have to pay. So kasha is so a problem mamzeres. It says in our Mishnah by mamzeres that you have to pay knas. You have to pay knas, and l'chayda by mamzeres everyone holds you get malchus, and by malchus they come with rabbanim. So the Gemara, you're right. Hanicha isal. If you hold Rabbi Yechon, very simple. He holds Rabbi Yechon. If there was no lashes, you still pay money. Our Mishnah talking about there was no warning. There's no lashes. Umetad nametad like Rabbi Yechon. Elisav, he holds like a shlakish. Al korcha Rabbi Yechon. We have no choice. The housing alone like a shlakish doesn't make sense because it doesn't make a difference if you were warned or not warned. Come with Rabbanim. So must be Rabbi Yechon is really holds like Rabbi Yechon. Okay, one more piece. Says the Gemara. Rish Lakish says if you did an aveda. Sorry. Lost the picture. What time do you have to leave, Gary? Gary, what time do you have to...
It's Mincha's 5:10.
Okay. So we can go a little bit further. We'll just finish the block. Okay, says the Gemara further. Okay, so Rish Lakish says that if he committed an aveda that that deserves malchus, even though you're not getting malchus, you're potter because come the Rabbaneh. So the master said to Abaye, so till now we discussed how Rabbah fits into the Mishnah. Now we'll say according to Reish Lakish. The master said to Abaye, Reish Lakish. The Omar, he says, the Feidish rips a Torah chayav malchus. The Shlokish said that the Torah clearly said that if somebody did an aveda that's chayav malchus, even though you're not getting malchus, you are potter from paying. So even though you did b'shegi, you're potter. Just like chayav misses, no difference. If you lit a fire on Shabbos by mistake, you don't have to pay money for the person's house because kamle b'derabbanei. So man tane the polugolad of Mechurim Akana. Who argues with the Mechurim Akana? And the Mechurim Akana says that if you committed an avera of chorus, it's kamle b'derabbanei, and the Chachamim disagree. What do you mean the Chachamim disagree? The Chayda, every chorus comes with a malchus, and even if you weren't warned, the Shlaki says you don't pay money. So who argued Mechurim Akana? According to Mechurim Akana, it's the chorus that says you don't have to pay money. According to Chachamim, it'd be the malchus that says you don't have to pay money, because every avera you do that you deserve to get chorus, you also deserve to get malchus if you warned. And according to Shlakish, even if you weren't warned, you're exempt from paying money. So who are the Rabbanan who argue in the Mechurim Akana? Says the Gemara, because my answer could be a few. It could be Rab Meir who says that malchus is no kamla b'derabbanei by malchus. So you're right. I argue Mechurim Akana. Chorus does not exempt you, but malchus does. But I hold that malchus, Rab Meir says, doesn't exempt you either. So the author of our Mishnah is Rab Meir, and that's why you pay money. Or it could be Rabbi Yitzchak who says that there is no malchus in a case of chorus. So therefore, according to me, since I hold chorus does not exempt you, there's no malchus either. Therefore, you have to pay money. Okay, says the Gemara further. Tell them what we learned. It says in a Braisa. So our Mishnah said that even if you committed a sin that deserves chorus, like incest, you still have to pay money. And even though you cannot live with them, the Torah says you should live with them. You can't live with them, and we had two opinions. It means whether there's no kedushin at all with them, or even if there is kedushin, but you're living in sin. It doesn't matter. You still have to pay their money. Unless you lived with your daughter, which you're chayiv misa, then come the b'derabbanei. Says you want to tell about the Braisa. What happens if you force yourself on aroyas, something that's forbidden to you, like incest or shnius? Now, in Gemara Yavamas, whenever we use the word shnius, it means a second tier, which are only asum d'rabbanan, like your grandmother's mother, all that kind of stuff. Grandfather's mother, aroyas or shnius la aroyas, and second aroyas. Ein lehen loy knas, you don't pay a knas, because since you can't, according to this Braisa, since you can't live with them, v'loy pitu, and the same thing is if you seduce them, you don't have to pay money. You don't have to pay money. Hamam enes, if let's say a girl who was married and then walked out before the age of 12, which you learned about before, let's say that she was married off by her mother or by her siblings, not by her father, and then she walks out, ein lo loy knas, and then somebody, a brother, whatever it is, forces on her, there's no knas at all. Why? Because we assume that she's not a psula anymore. Even if she is, we assume that she's not. The lay pitui, nor is there the laws of pitui, because again, forcing a rape or pitui or seduction is the same thing, because she's not a naira, she's not a psula. What about an ainless, which is a girl that cannot bear any children? She has the signs of a male, and ainless is actually a male ram. Till the age of 20, if there's no signs, then she jumps straight from a minor to a senior. Ein la again, la knas. There's no knas because she's never a naira, so there's no knas. V'loy pitui, and nor is there the laws of pitui because it can't be a naira. But case number 4, yotzas v'shum shemra. If a man marries a woman, then he goes out there and he brings witnesses that says that she was not a psul at all. And in other words, we assume that she committed znus in the interim period. In fact, the Gemara later will ask, isn't she chayiv misa because she was mazana while she was a married woman? Ein lo knas v'lo pitu. There's no knas and no pitu. So the Gemara asks, my arayis and my shnius l'arayis. What do you mean when you say arayis? And what do you mean when you say shnius l'arayis? What's arayis and what's shnius l'arayis? Says the Gemara, what are these two cases? Normally we say, arayis means incest, but the Torah forbids. And shnius means medivrei sefer, which means you could marry her. It's only the Rabbanan that says that you can't, so why don't you pay knas? Knas is in the Torah, it says you have to pay. It's given when I say he could marry her, this woman who is shnius to you. Am I in like knas? Why aren't they deserving a knas? El arayis. I'll tell you what arayis means. Arayis means chayav Mrs. Bezin. If you live with someone that, for example, your daughter, That's Chayave Mrs. Bezin, and that's called Arayis, and therefore there's no Knaste. And because Kamed Rabbani, and Shnias means Chayave Krisis. And Shnias means that you chayiv krisis, that you committed a sin of courage, not the Rabbanon, also asim at but incest, which is only asim the Rabbanon. Now, why is there no knas? Let's say, especially the opinion says that knas Kamed Rabbanon doesn't apply by knas, because we follow Shimna Timni that has to be suitable to get married. These are not suitable to get married because it's asa. And Shnias means chayav krisis, the same thing. That the kedusha is not chav. Avol chayav lavin, but if let's say you live with someone that's only a lav, let's say a kohen with a divorcee, yesh lehen knas. There is a knas. Why? Why is it knas? Umani Shimon Timni. Follow Shimon Timni says that as long as kedushin, Blesi means the kedushin cannot be chal. As long as if you gave her kedushin, you need to give her a get, even though it's in sin, you're living in sin. So then there is knas, and that's this case here. Or Ikidam, another version is Arayis is Chayave Mrs. Bezin Chayave Krisis. Shnius means Chayave Lavin. Shni means the second tier, which is a lav, like a kohen with a divorcee. And in all these cases, there is no knas. Why is there no knas? Because we follow the other view. Mani Rav Shimon ben Menashe, follows Shimon ben Menashe, who says that even if the kedushin is a valid kedushin, but you're living in sin, there's no knas. Because the Torah says, "V'lo yisi elisha," it has to be someone that's suitable to be your wife. Okay, we'll stop over here.